everyone, Dustin from Loony Loomworks here. Today, I'm going to show you how to create a very simple loom using nothing more than a cardboard box and some yarn. This is a wonderful project for the kids, and it also helps teach us the basics of weaving. Let's get started, shall we? For this project, all you're going to need is a cardboard box. Most smaller sizes will work just fine. A box cutter, fabric scissors, one or two different types of yarn. I've just got some simple mainstays from the local Walmart acrylic yarn. And optionally, any tool that you can use to help your weaving go through the warp strings. What we're going to want to do first is take our cardboard box and remove the flaps on one side. I've already done this on mine, but it's very simple to do. Next, we're going to need to measure the length of this side, these sides of the box. So we know about roughly how many strings we can put into this loom. This box is roughly 7 inches. So I'm going to go in about 2 inches on either side, and then I'm going to use these 3 inches here as where my loom is really going to reside. So what I'm going to do when I get in there is I am going to take my pin or any type of marking device. You can even just use your box cutter if you want. In fact, let's just go that way. You can either mark them with a pencil, pen, or you can use your box knife, and I'm going to start right here. Make it a mark at my 2 inches. And then I'm going to keep going every 1/4 of an inch down. So once you get to that end of the 3 inches, you go ahead and stop, or however size. About 3 inches is a good starting width. Now, your depth of your notches, and you're going to need to do this for both sides, need to be roughly, I'd say, about 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 an inch at absolute most. It's just going to be enough that you can get your yarn down in there and secure. So once you've already got those notches in there, you can go ahead and very carefully make sure those notches go down to the desired length. Alright, now that we got those notches in, we're going to do the same on the other side. And I'm going to use the pin on this side to show you that example. Now that we've got the marks, we're going to go ahead and cut it. Alright, we've got that taken care of. Now all we need to do is get our yarn cut down and ready to go. So let's grab that. So now that we've ready with our box, we're going to grab our yarn. I'm going to start with green. You can use it all in one color, but I prefer doing 2 to teach people so you can see the contrasting difference. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to take your simple yarn. You're going to create, I like to do just about 1 or 2 knots, just simple overhand knots, just to create a little bit of bulk. You're going to want a little bit of bulk in that. You're going to take it and you're going to bring your box over, and then on the very far side, one of the first slits you did, it doesn't matter which side you start on, but you have to start at the very edge. You take it and you just slide it on down into that slot. Now the reason we have that knot there is that it will grab it. You can now pull on it. So then you're going to take it and you're going to keep it taut all the way down, and then you're going to put it into the bottom slot, the same side as where you began on the bottom. So you got a perfect vertical-ish line. Now you're going to wrap it around that tag. That next slot is where you're going to want that yarn to come back on through. Now the key thing here, you kind of come up and go in. Now the key thing is that you're going to want to keep this tight, but you do not want it so tight of where it starts to bend your tabs down here at the end. because if those start bending, your weaving is going to get loose. It's going to get what I like to call wonky. But then you just repeat this process all the way down. And if you start seeing it get too tight, if you start seeing your tab starting to bend, you can loosen it. You can take it back out and loosen it up some. Keep an eye on the structure of your box too. If your tabs are able to withstand it, but you can also kind of start seeing your box doing this number, kind of caving in. You're going to want to release some of that tension. So let's go ahead and finish warping this up. Alrighty, there we are. Now if you notice, due to how it's done, there is going to be a slight little curve on it, a little slant. That's okay. That is A-okay. If you also notice, my box has a little bit of a bend going in there. Some of these are a little tight, but that's A-okay. You can, go ahead and adjust it, give it a little bit. I'm not too worried about mine. A little bit of bow is okay. You just don't want it full on collapsing in on itself. So when you get it to this point, you're going to have this excess here at the end. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this last string, put it down into this last slot, get it roughly the tension of which you desire. You want it firm, but you don't want it too firm to where it's pulling in. If you go like this, you should be able to see how the box kind of bends like that. That's beautiful. That's perfect. It's just got this nice little bounce to it. So you're going to want to get this one at the same tension, and you're just going to go ahead and grab just right there where it meets the box. You're going to lift up and then go ahead and cut your yarn. Just go ahead and leave a little bit there, snip it on off, and this is where you're going to want to tie your knot. You're going to do the same thing as what you did up there at the top, but you've just got a very specific place to do it. So just do whatever your favorite knot is. Just make sure it's secure. Grab it, you pop it on down there. And I missed. And there we go. Congratulations. You have just warped your first loom. Now that we have our loom nice and warped, it's time to work on our weft portion. Here I have about 5 feet of a different colored yarn. Same exact size and style, just a different color. You can use the same color, but for teaching purposes, I like to use contrasting colors to better exemplify what you are doing. Now I am going to use my optional weaving tool. This is a simple wooden needle, wonderful for tapestry. However, you can use anything else that can take your weft strings and put it through your warp strings. This can be a bobby pin, it can be a safety pin, it can be just a wooden dowel that you drilled a hole into. So what I like to do is just take a simple end of it and just do an overhand knot, just ever so simple, very little excess, or as little excess as you can manage. And there we go. So let's start weaving. We're going to take our needle and we're going to make just a nice small weaving. This weaving is going to only be about yay big, just for teaching purposes of today. So how we're going to begin is we're going to go ahead and start on either side. It is completely up to you. And I like to go under, over, under, over, under, over, and repeating all the way down. Now you can go ahead and start over if you want, and then go under on the second one. It doesn't matter. Now, when you get to the end, you're going to want to keep about 2-3 inches. These 2-3 inches are going to be what helps lock this into place. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and on the bottom side, go ahead and wrap it over the top, do the opposite of what you just did, but underneath of it of what this with this excess that you have. And you're not going to have enough to go all the way across. That's just fine. But then you're going to want to pinch your end, roughly about there, and get this side a little bit taut. Now your edge here, this is your first edge. You're going to want that firm up against this edge string, but not so much the fact of where it's going to start pulling it in. So now you can use your fingers or your weaving tool and go ahead and kind of compact those a little bit. You're not going to have a solid straight line. A little trick that I like to use every now and then is use a thin piece of cardboard. You can use the lid from your box or other things, and go ahead and just go over under. Weave that piece of cardboard in there to help make a stabilizer. But now, all we're going to need to do is repeat this process back and forth. So, since we came out underneath on this side, we're going to want to go over. We just do the reverse. And then we go all the way down, just like we just did, but on the opposite, on the alternating. So then you pull it just, nice and taut, but not enough to where your string starts to bend. And then you can take your tool, fork, whatever you're using, and go ahead and just kind of pack that down a little bit. This is another reason of why I suggest using a stabilizer, because that way you can pack it up against the stabilizer. You don't have to worry about this side moving and walking on you. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to finish this up until I get to the end, because once we get to this side, it's going to be just the exact same, just as we started. You're just going to alternate back and forth all the way down. You're using the friction of the strings, of the warp and the weft strings, the warp and the weft strings, to create this weaving. Them pushing against each other constantly is what's going to hold this together. So there we are. Notice we have a little bit of a bend there. That's okay. A little bit of a bend happens. That's A-okay. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. And then when we get to the end, I will show you how to finish it off. Alright folks, there we are. If you notice we got a little bit of some wonky edges here, this is okay. You can take your tool, you can kind of pack it up. Like I said, this is another reason to have that stabilizer. It really helps. Now, how do we finish this? We've got this little extra. So let's go ahead and do one more pass going back through. So we're going to go ahead, do one more pass through. Bring it over. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim this. Get this off of here. You can untie it, you can do another pass, it's all up to you. I'm just going to trim it to save some time. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to beat in this row. Make sure I don't have, too much of a wonky edge there. And getting your edges taken care of nice and straight, that comes with nothing but practice. If you notice mine kind of goes in there as well on both sides, that is because I don't do this too very often, so I'm out of practice of keeping things evenly tensioned. That just comes with more and more experience. So now we've got this end. What do we do with it? Same thing of what we did down here. We just go ahead and just weave it back through, just act like we're adding another row. Yet again, it's not going to go all the way across, which is just fine. All right, this one pretty much does go all the way across, so even better. All right. And then we're going to take it, we're going to do the same thing, just kind of beat it on down in there, nice. And don't worry about these edges sticking out. We'll take care of those here in a minute. So, you've got your weaving done. There we are. So let's pretend we've got our weaving done. That this is the height and width of what you want it to. Just a nice little just a small little coaster, you know, let's just say for a wine glass or something. So how do we finish this? How do we end this? So let's pretend that we didn't have any stabilizers, which I didn't. How I'm going to end this is very, very carefully start removing these edges. I do 2 at a time. Now, with these 2, I'm going to leave the rest all in there. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to snip these ends. Now, there's many ways to finish. There are many ways to finish. This is my way. So then now we take it and then we just do some simple square knots. Now, you don't want to get too tight down in there. You do not want to get too tight. Just enough to where you know that's going to hold and it's not going to be coming apart. So then you do the same. I take the first 2 off just to give myself a little bit of working room. If you can finagle it with only taking one thing off at a time, take only one set of your warp strings off at a time. It's all up to the user. And there we go. Now then I'm going to do the same on this other end. Now on this other end, if you notice, we have that one string and then we have this double string. So I'm going to go ahead and pull off the double, make the trim. Now this one, you're going to have one set that's going to have 3. So how I do that is I hold 2 of them together, just treat them as one string, bring them over and down, and then right up against. Pretend this is like your other edge. You want it kissing up against, but yet you also want it firm so that it can't come loose. And then we just continue on down the line. Now, when I've gotten to this part, if you notice, we're getting to this string of that's where we began. What I would like to do is go ahead and start on this other side. Instead of pulling this one out, I'm going to come in over here and I'm going to get this side pulled out. And the reason I'm doing that, again, we're taking 2 strings, treating them as one, is because I want to be able to lock in that excess string, that excess weft there. That way it has less of a chance of coming out and messing with the rest of the tension of the weaving. There. That's more secure now. That is much more secure. And there we go. We've got our simple weaving. Now, you're probably looking at this and going, holy crap, that's a lot of edges. Yes, these are a lot of excess warp strings. I did it small just for a simple tutorial. Now, when you've got these down, all you need to do is you don't have to leave them this long. You can go in. I've seen many people do the type of thing of, well, they'll do a zigzag stitch with a sewing machine across here instead of tying them. They'll just take it off of the loom itself, set it on their sewing machine, and do a zigzag stitch to help lock in those strings. I've seen people just take them and twist them. I've seen people back comb it to get the yarn to felt up. There's many different ways to get it to finish, and each is really up to the artist. So for this training purpose, now that we've got these all simple knots, I like to go through and cut off this excess. Now, one key thing when you're cutting off this excess is that you do not want to cut it too close. If you cut it too close, you're going to have a bad time. So I like to leave anywhere from about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch and just make simple cuts all the way down. And now if you notice that blue piece where we finished our weaving sticking out, that's okay. That's okay. If you want, you can take a normal needle and weave him down in there. I just kind of take him and just give him a little bit of a snip and leave him be. He'll be just fine. And there you have it, folks. Congratulations. You just did your first weaving. Congratulations! You just finished your very first box loom and weaving. I hope you had as much fun as I did. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to leave them in the comments section below. I shall see you guys next time, and as always, stay loony, and I love you.